So I'm going to take a slightly different tack on what we've been discussing this morning. You know, we've been talking about moving from data to insight, about really sort of trying to understand the true pattern of effectiveness. And actually, we've seen some of the barriers. You know, Peter talked at length about the duopoly, some of the barriers in terms of the, proving the effectiveness of news brands. I'm going to talk about another barrier, and that's actually us. We are a barrier. Now, as I said, I did spend a lot of time in agency land, and one of the common comments that became increasingly common every day almost was, well, people don't do that anymore, do they? They don't watch telly, they don't read newspapers, they don't do anything like that. They just go on social media and they search for products online, and that's all that they do. Now, I think that's a really dangerous thing, because you're planning for people like you, and that world, Vanessa talked about it earlier about personalisation, that gets increasingly smaller if you're just planning for people like you. So I thought we need to tackle this really. And so I set up a project called Sample of One in the summer. This rather disturbing picture before that. Anybody seen Being John Malkovich? It's a very strange film if you have seen it. But it's really just to set up that challenge that people are not like us. We are, in media land, a unique breed of people. But actually, the people that we are planning for are actually very different. So it's really important that we understand them. So I set up this project in the summer. And I said thought the best way to demonstrate it was to get a group of agency people to complete the IPA Touchpoints Diary for a week, so measuring their media habits and consumption over a week. And I chose two groups of people. I chose young agency planners, all aged between 23 and 27, because they were some of the worst culprits, saying people don't do that anymore, do they? And thinking everybody was like them. And I also got some agency CEOs and MDs to complete it, because actually they may still read newspapers and watch telly. You'd be surprised actually at some of the findings for them. But actually they're under pressure to deliver the new, the exciting, the innovative. Nobody ever got fired for putting something new on a plan. But nobody ever got fired for not putting newspapers on a plan. So actually I thought we needed to tackle it from both ends. But actually this morning I'm going to concentrate on the young agency planners and the findings from them. But you can find the results of the agency media leaders on the website if you want to go and have a look. So these are there's not 30 pictures on there if you count them up quickly, but some of the willing volunteers that we had from the media agencies. And we got them to fill in the IPA Touchpoints Diary for a week in July. So every half hour they were completing what they were doing, who they were with and where they were. They didn't do it while they were asleep, it's okay, because you can put I was asleep from X to Y. And they also then looked at what media they consumed, how they felt, and what sort of mood they were in. So actually, rather than just tell you the findings, I'm going to get you to guess some of the findings. So for each of the questions I'm going to ask you, you'll have to hold up your red card or your black card. So question 1, how many hours a day do young people 23 to 27 spend watching TV video content? So what this is using the main IPA Touchpoints Diary study. So people 23 to 27 around the country, not our young agency planners. I'll come back to those in a moment. Do they watch it for 2 hours, 36 minutes a day? Or do they watch it for 3 hours, 48 minutes a day? Cards in the air. Oh, it's a bit like, what's that? Can't cook, won't cook. No, ready, steady, cook, that's it. We're a bit mixed here, aren't we? Sort of about half and half in terms of red cards and black cards, okay? The answer is actually 3 hours, or whatever it was. I changed it to minutes there. It was the black one. So they watch it for 3 hours, just under 4 hours a day. But our young media planners that we recruited actually watch for 2 hours, just over 2.5 hours a day. So actually they are still watching telly, but they're watching it actually for quite a lot less than our young people around the country. Question 2. What percentage of viewing does Netflix account for amongst young people around the country aged 23 to 27. Is it 30% or is it 10%? More red than black. Interesting. The answer is actually 10%. But actually for our young media planners, it was 30%. So no wonder they think that people don't watch live telly anymore. Because if 30% of their viewing is accounted for by catch-up on demand through Netflix, then that's quite a significant difference, I would say. Now, I'm talking about 30 people here in terms of the people that I looked at, but it's more indicative of the sort of story that we're planning for people not like us. I mean, 10% is still a really reasonable percentage, but it's not as high as 30 by any shape or form. Okay, how many hours a day do young people 23 to 27 spend emailing? 2 hours 42 minutes or 5 hours 18 minutes? Red, so a bit more red than black. Right, that's the right answer. So our young media planners spend over 5 hours a day emailing. I mean, obviously they're doing some other things at the same time, but they're spending 5 hours a day emailing, double that of their counterparts around the country. So, email's definitely the bane of all of our lives, I'm sure that you'll agree, but it's not as much of a bane for young people around the country. And you can see there are some other things that are actually quite similar, messaging services, social networking, although our young media planners spend quite a lot less time speaking on a mobile phone, probably because they're spending more time emailing. How many minutes a day do young people 23 to 27 spend reading a printed newspaper? Is it 45 minutes or is it 33 minutes? A bit more black, actually quite a lot more black than red this time. Okay. The answer is actually 45 minutes. So it's our young media planners that are spending much less time reading. I mean, they're still reading them, but they're spending quite a bit less time. Although there's not so much of a difference when it comes to news brands in digital form. They're very similar to young people around the country. Okay, which of these two newspaper titles takes the greatest share of young people's time? So our young people around the country. Is it Metro or is it The Sun? Ooh, a lot more red. A few blacks, some late deciders here. Right. It's actually The Sun, because actually it's around about 32% of time when you look at the share of time across all young people around the country. Our young media planners read just 4 titles. So Evening Standard, Metro, Eye and Guardian. They're really not representative of their counterparts around the country. And actually when you go to the digital form, they add on just 2 more. So there's a bit of Daily Mail going on and a bit of highbrow Financial Times going on. Okay, a couple of not funny, but a bit of fun to finish off with. How many have used Uber here? This is you. Have you used Uber? Yeah. Okay. So actually, I should have done yes and no. But if you've used Uber, can you put your red card up, please? Yeah, I didn't do this for the young people around the country, but our agency types definitely like convenience, and half had used Uber an average of 4 times in 7 days. It's quite a lot. I mean, this is London, so I don't know whether it's necessarily, it would be significantly less, but by the amount of, how many have used it in the last week? Yeah, a fair number of you. Shouldn't have you used Pokemon Go, it should have you played Pokemon Go. Bear in mind this survey was done in July. So this is passive tracking of their mobile devices, so you see which apps they went on. So how many here have played Pokemon Go? About half of you. I mean, it just shows you that you should never think that people are like you, because I personally can't see the point. my son keeps talking to me, he's 13 on Friday, and he keeps talking to me about, you can evolve this Pokemon. Why do I want to? Just shows you, definitely, that's why kids think their parents are just don't understand them, isn't it? But Pokemon was definitely, we like a craze. Half the participants had played the game, logging in 50 times each on average in 7 days. So that's 7 or 8 times during the week. 7 or 8 times each day, actually, if you spread it across the week. So that was just a little bit of a fun thing to finish. But I hope that, what I've shown you, actually, go back, I don't want to play the video yet. What I've shown you is that people are definitely not like us. And so for the young, particularly for the young media planners in our agencies or in our organisations, it's really helpful to remind them that they are not like the people around the country that are the same age as them. Just because they're the same age don't mean they do or watch or read in the same way. And one of the skills of media planning is planning for people not like you. It's understanding audiences. And that's where I think the stuff that we heard, from Alex this morning about moving from data to insights is really using the data to develop those insights about the audience. So don't let us be a barrier to investment in news brands or to greater improving the effectiveness of news brands. Just to finish off with, I've got a film of a few of our young planners just talking about what surprised them about taking part in the experiment. We did, they're all girls. The boys were too shy to be on camera and said, no, we couldn't possibly, we could write you something about it if you like. But the girls were happy to take part.
The experiment has given me a really useful insight into kind of young people my age in other areas of the UK. I think in London you kind of get caught up in the London life and its city life, and there's always something going on.
I hadn't considered before the experiment if the media habits were representative of the general population. I think it made me realise that they probably aren't representative.
I think I did take it for granted that I do represent a regular media user, just because on the Insight team we're often researching about consumers in general. You don't really think about yourself as a media consumer, but thinking about how much TV you watch and how much you look at your phone, it sort of makes you think more about how you use it as well as other people.
I was quite surprised to see that people my age had read newspapers more than I did.
It does shock me that media planners read such a small number of titles.
I would say I was quite surprised by the fact that young media planners spend less time reading newspaper titles. So I expected this to be the other way round.
I guess you would expect us to read more, considering our occupation. You think we might read a wider variety.
I think we should stop being so city-centric and thinking that London's the hub of the UK, because there's so much more out there.
Bringing into it people who work in media versus not work in media brings a really nice touch to it, I guess, because we're planning for people who we think are like us, but they might not necessarily be like us. We might be a section of our own that actually behave in a different way that we've not really thought about.
I think as a media planner it's important to always bear in mind that you're not representative of the nation as a whole, but I think sometimes we can all be a bit guilty of that, I behave this way, therefore everyone else must do that, and I think it's important to realise that that's just a sample of one.
Thank you very much. I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into the habits of young agency planners versus the people around the country. And if you want to see the media leaders' data, it's available on the Newsworks website. Thank you very much.